Alright, Mark, here's your new 497 HPC. So appreciate your order. And just kind of working with it right now. That's it right there. So I got the FM powered. When it's all the way up, it's going to be 100 watts. I know it sounds like a lot, but the radio is a beast. It can do that. I'm showing on my Astron 35 amp power supply when I had it keyed up. I was showing about between 10 and 20 amps of draw on the front meter of that thing. I can't show you because it's down on the floor because I just don't have room up here on the desk for it. So, but you need to really have a strong supply for it. I would also recommend, I know the radio is fused back here. I would also recommend maybe putting a fuse in your power line at some point. I think it's always a good idea to actually have the fuse on the power line instead of it being fused here. Because if you were to get a short or something, let's say later in this isn't your power cord, this is mine, but it's the same cord that you get. If you were to get a short or something, you want to make sure that the fuse pops and cuts the voltage somewhere along the line of the cord and not until it gets into the radio and then pops it. So that could be a bad thing. So I would recommend getting a fuse on the positive side. I don't know why they don't supply it like that, but at least as far as I know, they don't. I haven't looked at the new power cords in there to see what they look like, but this is a replacement that I bought, and it doesn't have a fuse on it. So maybe the radio power cord does, but I don't think it does. I think it's the same cord. FM deviation is about 2.4 kilohertz, up from about 1.7 out of the factory. One thing I would also point out on this radio, and I would wait obviously until the warranty is up on it and everything, because if you go in and start doing stuff like that, it will void the warranty. But these capacitors are kind of like a no brand Chinese made capacitor, and by rights they probably work okay. Obviously the radio is working good, but I think you would probably benefit from having some good name brand quality capacitors put in this radio. And I'm saying the whole board, have it redone. If it were my radio that I was going to use on a daily basis, like if it was my only radio, which is hard to say because I don't just use one radio, but some guys do. I think that the quality of what's being used here is just whatever, the Chinese make. You can get some much better quality stuff from, DigiKey, Mauser, places like that, some more reputable name brand capacitors. Now, does it mean that these are bad? Not really, but if you go on the website, what is it, the EV blog, I think is what it is, EEV or something, where they talk about a lot of like stuff like electronics and name brand versus like stuff, these don't have a very good reputation, this brand and many others that are similar names. So it's just something to throw out there. It doesn't mean the radio has any problems or anything, but I would think that having more reliable capacitor in the radio, like some name brand stuff, is just beneficial. But you could say that about anything. You're not going to buy a television brand new and sit there and put new capacitors on the board. So I wouldn't mess with any of that until the warranty is up, and if, like, say you had a small problem or something down the road with the radio that was out of warranty or something, one thing might be good at that point to have it fully recapped with some reliable, better capacitors by the better brand. That's all I'm trying to say. So it doesn't mean that you should do anything or even worry about it, but just things that people would try to sell you, I guess, and say, well, I can do it right now and charge you $100 for it. I'm not going to do that because there's no reason to do it, and I wouldn't even recommend it. But down the road in the future, maybe it'd be beneficial to do it at some point in this radio's lifetime. A lot of the older radios can definitely benefit from it versus not. So I'm going to do the AM now for you. Put this radio in AM. I think it's here. Yeah, there's AM. So we're going to put the tone generator back on AM setting. And I'm going to set the dead key and stuff. So this radio on the low power side, when your RF power is at a minimum, which it's at right now, It's not going to do a lot of power. This is a high power radio, which is meant to be run in the high power. I like to say about 12 o'clock is kind of the sweet spot on it, but you can run this thing up all the time and it won't hurt the radio in the slightest. So they got it coming out of the factory at about 40 watts. I try to turn that down some. I think that's a touch too high. So let's do that now. Usually I think it lets me go to like 30 or something. I mean, you can go higher obviously, but I don't think anybody would really want that. Actually, this one's let me bump her down just a little bit. So there's about 27. I think that's a little bit better there. So let's just take a quick peek at how it's looking. I want to make sure that I got my stuff set up right here. Over here, it's a little off frequency, but I'll address that later. It's not terrible. This is perfectly acceptable for AM mode. It's not real critical on AM. So, right, so we're going to modulate this thing. And there's PEP. It's about 90 on the bird. And then RMS, it's about 45 to 50, somewhere in that range. So she's looking pretty good already. Just by lowering that dead key down, it really helps it. So I'm curious to see where the radio will go with it all the way down. So let me turn this radio all the way down. 5 watts. So I want to change that to maybe like 4. Let's see how it's going to look down here. I think it's going to look a little more puny because of the fact the way the radio is designed. The audio, it's a little less audio there. It's not bad by any means, but it is a little less audio, so you could bump it up here slightly. So you can make that look really nice now. And so our RMS is about double and our PEP is about 16. So that's kind of like a normal radio, like, you know, how that would work. Now if we turn up the power, you can see it really takes off, but we're pinched off a little bit. So what I would recommend, it's really close to that point right there. So what I would recommend is if you back off the power some, the RF power, I want to see kind of where it, yeah, it doesn't really change a whole. About 12 o'clock, it's right on that threshold. It just depends how you want it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of, I mean, the guys that are like the textbook guys, buy the book, the purists and all that, oh man, you know, but it's really not a big deal. Doesn't mean that you're going to come over people's televisions and, you know, their phones and stuff anymore. But I mean, we can clean it up a little bit like that. And that's pretty respectable there. That's really respectable. So it's just all about how far do you want to take it. Now we'll turn the power all the way down. And you can see that, you know, if we do that and enlarge it, it's really not that bad there. So I'm probably going to leave it there. But again, you know, the days of worrying about like coming over your neighbor's phones and TVs and stuff, I mean, it's pretty much a non-factor anymore. So there's not really as much to worry about. But you know, we're holding in pretty good. Let's see what we're showing here. It's about 98% with it all the way up, and then with it all the way down, like I say, it's a little lower. So we can find out like where is a good sweet spot, which is usually about 12 o'clock. And that's about 95% right there. And what's that going to give us for a dead key? Well, I just sent a burst tone in the radio. Don't want to do that. So with about 12 o'clock, we're looking at about 13, 14 watts. And then we're looking at about 40 something there. And then our RMS is about, it's pretty close to a little less than double. So that's about how I like to set these up. Again, it's a high power radio. So what I mean by high power is like a 100 watt radio. You know, that's what I would consider a high power radio. Your like other type of radios, the 60 watt radios, are just like middle of the road. And then you have your CBs, which are obviously the more legal power. Not that there's laws regarding things, it's just rules. So, you know, you're technically not breaking a law, you're breaking a rule. I'm not going to tell people how to run their equipment, what they should or shouldn't do. That's not for me to say. It doesn't matter to me how you run it, just don't break it. You know, I mean, and I say that even to myself. I don't want to break any of my stuff either, because people can make mistakes. I can make mistakes. I have made mistakes. So, you know, anybody that wouldn't admit to that is, you know, they're lying to themselves. But that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm going to check S9 on this really quick for you, but there's not a whole lot to do on these. They're pretty straightforward. And, you know, like I said, maybe someday in its lifetime you might want to put like some better quality caps, the Panasonics, the Nichicons, what is it, the Rubicon, stuff like that. You know, is it going to make the radio like do more power? No. Is it going to make the radio sound better? It could, but probably not. So it's more or less just a peace of mind and a longevity thing. But again, the world that we live in today, with a lot of things, especially things that are electronically inclined, it's a recycle, throwaway society. So I would say that these capacitors are recyclable and throwaways. At one point they will go out, and probably they won't last very long. Like an old Uniden radio that you might find, or a Cobra, a lot of those capacitors are still within a certain spec, and they're 30, 40 years old. I guarantee you these capacitors won't last 30 or 40 years. So that's all I mean by what I said about the capacitors. Alright, so she's right on S9 for you. It's always good to try to look at it facing you instead of doing it upside down, but that's the factory adjustment, so I'd say that's right on the money for you there. So she's looking good. So I'm going to get the cover back on. We'll take a final look at the power and stuff.